Just so you all know, this top 5 only comes from seasons 1 through 8. The reason I did this is that for all these seasons, they probably have just as much talking material as seasons 9 and 10. So if I did this type of video after I did the whole series, it'd probably be filled with season 9 and 10 episodes. Hell, I've only done half of season 9 and would probably put at least 3 of the episodes I've covered on this list. But that's enough rambling. Lights out. What can I say about this episode that hasn't already been said? It's lazy, it's boring, and it's just not an engaging watch. Some of you might think the episode is lazy because there's little to no on-screen animation happening, and while that is true, that isn't the only component to this episode's laziness. In addition to having little to no animation, the story elements and where consecutive events happen back-to-back spatially don't make any kind of sense. There's a scene where Timmy exits his house through his front door, and we see a decent portion of the front lawn, only to then see him fall down a hill that wasn't present before. It seems that they just use the darkness as an excuse to have anything they want happen, even when it doesn't connect with any cohesion. I will admit, it was a big risk to do a different kind of style with this episode, but if style over substance ever described an episode accurately, it would be this one. This episode gives the impression that they tried the different style for the sole purpose of being able to put in as little effort as possible, and as a result, there's a noticeable drop in production quality to this from pretty much any other episode of the show. You know the saying, you either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain? Well, this episode epitomizes it. Throughout all the Fairly Oddparents, the TV movies were some of the show's best episodes. Channel Chasers, School's Out the Musical, Wishology, etc. And then there's this one, which is just so dumb, and it's based on such a stupid premise that could have been avoided, had this episode been thought through a little bit. No one knows about this secret wish, but yet every wish a godchild makes is recorded and documented, but also, Cosmo brings forth evidence that this secret wish happened, even though he's not supposed to remember that it happened. I've never seen an episode so thoroughly prove through itself that the title event of the episode couldn't possibly have happened. If the wish was secret, then how could it be documented? But on that same token, how can a secret wish even be made in the first place if all wishes are documented? Even if you clear that hurdle, Cosmo shouldn't be able to bring in evidence for an event he didn't remember, even if he's supposed to be the stupid character. Not just the stupidity is the problem with this episode, though. For an extended length episode, there's not enough story here. There's long sequences with not a lot going on, and in an episode this long, you can't let that happen. Especially when the story doesn't make much sense. You might be shocked to see this as low as it is, and to be honest, I was as well. But in these bottom 3 episodes, the messaging was so bad, they got put in that next tier below episodes that were just bad for technical issues, writing, animation, pacing, etc. The problem with this episode is that, in an unintended way, it sort of excuses Mr. Crocker's behavior. Mr. Crocker doesn't do anything to redeem himself in this episode, but by comparison to this substitute teacher, he essentially gains the effects of a redeemed character. It's the most artificial way to do character development, and it sort of cheapens any Crocker episode you watch after this one, because Crocker's behavior in most episodes is the butt of the joke. But here, it's just kind of ignored in a weird attempt to make him sympathetic. But the entire point of a character like Crocker is that he has a crap life, but he's so pathetic in his attempts to capture Cosmo and Wanda, and he gets so much joy out of failing Timmy that his crappy home life feeds into the joke. So in a weird way, they felt they could do this plot by doing the one thing that would make Mr. Crocker a less funny character. This was probably expected to be number 1, and I have a feeling that most of you would put it at number 1 on your list, but as I've said before, the actual number 1 on this list actually makes this episode seem better by comparison. Of course, that obviously doesn't stop it from being on this list. When you think about what Timmy is being told in the episode and how it's treated as an obvious lesson he should learn, what really gets accomplished? Timmy is repeatedly shown in the episode to not be appreciated for spending his time and money doing good deeds for people. And he isn't shown to have ulterior motives for this either. He's just doing what he thinks will be helpful for his family and friends and gets treated like crap regardless. Any normal functioning audience member is going to relate to having that happen at least some point in their life. But upon seeing what everyone's life is like without him existing, Timmy then comes to the realization that everyone's life is better without him in it. At that point, the worst problem isn't how Timmy is treated, it's the realism of the premise. I can't buy that someone who would selflessly do good deeds for those around him is a liability in his family's and friends' lives. And thus, I don't buy that Timmy needs to learn the lesson that he learns in this episode. Because after you've created a situation where a character the audience can empathize with learns the lesson in the episode where he's the good guy, in other episodes, I can understand teaching this kind of lesson. Timmy has had his bad moments, but just not here. And with Timmy in this episode, if they had made him a jerk in the beginning, I think it could have worked. I think this episode is objectively worse than It's a Wishful Life, and it's weird to me that it doesn't nearly get that level of hate. Almost every flaw in It's a Wishful Life, this episode also had, and worse. But at least with a bit of tweaking, the aforementioned episode could have been improved. I don't know a single way they could have improved this one. This story just doesn't have an easy way to be fixed. Where previously it could have been justified to have Timmy learn the lesson, they just didn't set it up properly. Here, Timmy has to accept that his existence will always be a punching bag for Vicky. He will have to take this abuse in every possible timeline. It's kind of the inverse of the problem with the previous entry. In that episode, there's no timeline where his friends and family's lives aren't worse, and there's no timeline here where But personally, the writing of the previous entry wrote the episode out of being a workable concept. This one was just an unworkable concept to begin with. You can't, in a children's show, tell me that your protagonist's purpose is to be abused. That just cannot be something an episode explores. Full stop. Sorry if my number one entry was too short or a cop-out, but it's because I've already reviewed this episode twice, basically. I reviewed it in my Season 6 review, obviously, but then I've also done a full review earlier this year of Vicky Gets Fired, and so if you want more detail, I suggest watching either of those. But thanks for watching this video anyway. Have a good one.